It is wrong to try to export systems and values, or to export revolution, new ideas, or export counter-revolution, old ideas. This was the mistake of the Pope when Protestantism rose up. You remember when there was a split in the church, some of the church tried to use violence to suppress the other people, which led to wars. I think they were called the 30 Years' Wars, the religious wars. It was a waste of time. It was the mistake of Metternich when capitalism came on the scene. This Metternich was a prime minister of Austria-Hungary. And when the capitalists took over power in France, he tried to overthrow them. And he caused so much problem for Europe. And I think that's how Austria-Hungary broke up. Mistake of Napoleon when he tried to export the ideas of the French Revolution. The mistake of the Western intervention powers against Bolshevik communism in Russia. The mistake of the imperialist countries trying to maintain neo-colonialism in Africa, like the killing of Patrice Lumumba or the killing of Salvador Allende in Chile. If you think that your ideas are correct, read the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 16. It says, "Let your light shine so shine before men that they see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." That's what it says. If you know you are right, don't try to use force and pressure to change people. Just show your good example and we copy it. In other words, influence people by your good examples and not by coercion. Those actors who try to interfere in the internal affairs of other countries overestimate themselves and underestimate the capacity of the people of the world and their ability to defend their legitimate interests. Those actors are also uninformed. The imperialist actors used the gap in history following when the Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople in 1453, while the peoples of Africa, Asia, and Latin America were not mobilized. They took that advantage to control much of the world. However, two phenomena outside the control of the imperialists marked the beginning of the counter-offensive by the colonized peoples of the world. One phenomenon was the coming to power in Russia of the communists in 1917. This was a social force in a semi-modern big country that had no interest in colonizing other people of the world. Marshal of the Soviet Union, Gorgy Zhukov, in his book Reminiscences and Reflections on page 267, writes as follows. This is in quotes. "Let me recall a set of facts which, when reported to Stalin, were likely to heighten his distrust for the above warning. I mean the secret negotiations with Nazi Germany in London in 1939, precisely when Britain, France, and USSR were holding military talks in Moscow. British diplomats were offering the Nazis an agreement on dividing the spheres of influence on a world scale. The British Minister of Trade, Hudson, said during his talks with a Nazi called something, Wartat, a Nazi Privy Councillor, close to Field Marshal Goering, that three extensive regions offering unlimited opportunities of economic activity, the British Empire, China, and Russia were open to the two countries. These people are proposing to share the world, proposing to the Russians, but the Russians rejected it. Why do you want to share the world? Why do you want to share other people? You can't be clever when you think like that. Eh? You can share cows, you can share goats, but to share people. Why do you want to share? Spheres of influence. Who are you? When Hitler tried to offer the Soviet Union to discuss the idea of dividing the world in spheres of influence, he encountered a sharp and unequivocal refusal of the Soviet side, which would not even hear of the subject. The imperialist actors did not pay heed to this just stand, and inter-imperialist rivalry soon plunged the globe into the catastrophe of the Second World War, where the Soviet Union played the major role of defeating fascist Germany and Japan. The anti-imperialist camp grew when the communists took control of another big country, China, in 1949. In fact, one clever American general, Omar Bradley, aptly described the involvement of the Western countries in the Korean War as, in quotes, a wrong war at a wrong time, in a wrong place, with the wrong enemy. So, those who want to control the world, this was their first problem. These big countries which were taken over by people who didn't believe, who didn't share their view. The second phenomenon was the founding of the ANC, the African National Congress, by the broad sections of the African peoples in South Africa to spearhead the resistance of the African people against the evil system of colonialism. The African resistance would no longer be led by chiefs with ostrich feathers, but by more enlightened freedom fighters such as Jomo Kenyatta, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Samora Moses Machel, Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, Robert Mugabe, and others. So these two events, the communists taking over Russia in 1917, and then China in 1949, and taking a strong stand against Ofuzu Matwari, against imperialism. And then the ANC being started, led by new people, and later joined by other movements, like TANU of Tanganyika, like our UNC here, like the parties of Ghana. These two events could no longer allow the imperialists to play around. With these two factors, it is futile for the imperialist countries to entertain illusions of perpetuating their control over Africa, let alone the whole of the global South. They are squandering abundant goodwill that the Africans have toward the citizens of those countries in spite of the past mistakes. Since the founding of the ANC in 1912, much of the global South has ejected the imperialists. Indonesia under Sukarno in 1946. India under Gandhi and Nehru in 1947. Vietnam under Ho Chi Minh 1954. Cuba under Castro 1959, and so on and so forth. Yet these victorious anti-colonial revolutions are not necessarily anti-West in all aspects. Take Vietnam. Who lost when the victorious Vietnam united and became a stronger powerhouse in Southeast Asia? Even the USA today seems to have good relations with a strong Vietnam. Therefore, these standoffs and conflicts are due to philosophical, ideological, and strategic shallowness or parasitism by some narrow groups in the respective countries or both. Those involved should stop wasting our time and the good opportunities of the whole world. With these 8 ingredients, Uganda is unstoppable. With these 8, talk of aid is laughable. We do not need aid. It is the mishandling of these 8 that is the killer. Jesus, in the book of Matthew chapter 15, verse 11, pointed out that what kills a person is what comes from within him, but not what comes from outside. It says, in quotes, what goes in someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them. End of quotes. I thank you and I wish you good luck.